Hey there, it's Jeremy with Digital Traffic Ace, and just wanted to shoot you this short video to give my thoughts on everything going on with the coronavirus, the impact on business, and everything surrounding that. Now, the only reason I'm doing this video is because we've got some questions in our inbox or in our communities or via Messenger, and I'm not an expert. This is just my thoughts. This is not something you should act on or take as expert advice. So I definitely want to preface by saying that I'm just kind of sharing my thoughts on everything. And there's three things I want to cover. Number one being the reality of the situation. Number two being the impact on online marketing in e-commerce, things like that. And then number three, sort of a forward-looking outlook. People ask about recessions and downturns, and I'm going to give my thoughts on that as well. So number one, most important thing is the reality of the situation. And one of my mentors told me years ago, and this is so important, that in life and in business, whenever things are good and whenever things are bad, you always have to have perspective. And I think that's important here because maybe you're like me where you're just dealing with some inconveniences and things like that. But I'm not sick. I don't have any friends or family that are sick. But there are people out there that are sick, and that's the number one thing to remember. The most important thing is really the safety and the health of humanity, right? So all the inconveniences we're dealing with, the reality is they're just trying to stop the spread of the virus, because if the virus spreads, then it overwhelms the healthcare system and people get sick, and then certain people will die, and they already have. And that's really where our thoughts and prayers should be, is with those who have been affected by this, who have friends or family that have gotten sick or passed away. And if you're just like me, where you're just kind of dealing with inconveniences, I think the perspective is it's very important that there's people out there that are really hurting and sick, and that everything that's happening is to protect and make sure the least amount of people get sick and unfortunately die. So that's number one. Now, number two is we can't just ignore business. Obviously, there's impacts on business. But again, perspective is important here. So if you're doing anything online, I think that we're very fortunate because if you look at the offline world, if you're like a restaurant owner in a downtown and the city's sort of shut down, people aren't going to work, you're not getting any customers. Your business is literally hurting. Literally, it's at zero because there's nobody coming in to eat at your restaurant. Or if you look at even the bigger scale, like these big sporting events, like the NCAA tournament that are shut down. It's not just that there's no tournament, there's a huge trickle-down effect. Nobody's going to the tournament. Hourly workers that work the tournament or work concessions or restaurants around there, or their vendors, they're not getting paid. Nobody's going, so that hurts taxis, that hurts people that are trying to make money with Uber, that hurts the surrounding restaurants. Maybe people that go to the game hire babysitters. That hurts that whole market. And then if people are making less money, then they have less disposable income to go to restaurants, to go shopping, and that affects obviously the economy as a whole. Maybe they can't pay bills. So there's a large trickle-down effect. But again, perspective-wise, really as if you're doing stuff online, we're pretty fortunate because the offline stuff is hurting a lot, because if you're like me, people aren't really going out to eat, and they're not really going shopping and things like that. And actually, so kind of ironically, we've seen a lot of success, more people buying. We've seen some of our students have big weeks, see increases in sales. And I was reading an interview on Klaviyo, which is the one of the top email marketing platforms for e-commerce. And the guy in the article was saying how he believed that there might be an uptick in e-commerce online sales just because people aren't going to malls. They're going to be on their phones and computers more, and they're just kind of sitting there, so they're going to be scrolling. So from an online perspective, we're actually really lucky. May actually, depending on what you're doing and what you're selling, you may see an increase in sales. But again, keeping the perspective is that we're lucky. There's businesses out there that are really hurting, and it hurts a lot of people and hurts the economy in a lot of ways. And that kind of leads me to my third thing, which is sort of a forward outlook on the economy. So people ask about recessions and things like that. And again, I'm not an expert by any means. I know very little on this subject, just besides what I read and what I've learned. But one thing I do know is that the economy goes through cycles. So you have good times, then you have corrections or recessions, and then you have more good times, and then it goes down again, and it goes back up. So if you look back at like 2008, there's generally something that will cause the downturn, right? In that time, there was banks and real estate and loans and all types of stuff that was basically building and building and building, and then it kind of busted, right? In this case, like 6 to 8 months ago, this wasn't on our radar, right? But what we do know is that the economy has been really, really good for 10 plus years. And generally what that means is that at some point there's going to be some kind of correction or downturn. But in this case, and I tend to be an optimistic person, it wasn't because of something that was happening out in the economy. It wasn't because of auto loans or real estate or anything like that. It was because of this virus that came out of nowhere and basically shut things down, which impacts the economy, right? So when I think about it, maybe, and again, I'm talking just economically, maybe this means better things for the future. So when I say that, let's just say this didn't happen and the economy kept rolling along, and then maybe 1 to 2 years from now, a downturn hit, maybe something with loans or something, caused the economy to come down, go into a recession. Well, maybe this is a temporary halt, kind of stops things, slows things down, puts the economy into a temporary down cycle, but then it passes, and then everything picks back up, and then maybe we avoid what would have been a downturn in a year or two, and the economy continues to roll on for many more years. So I don't know if that's what will happen or not, and again, I'm not qualified to speak on this. I just tend to be an optimistic person, and I think, okay, well, if this is slowing things down, then maybe there won't be a slowdown in a year or two, and maybe this is something that actually, again, from an economic standpoint, could end up being good for the future. Obviously, there's no good with a virus or people, businesses suffering and things like that. Again, this is just forward thinking. If you have to find some kind of good in the situation, maybe that's something that could happen where this temporary slowdown prevents a longer slowdown in the future. And then when this passes, which is hopefully soon, things pick back up and continue to roll for several more years. So all I know is we'll see. That's my kind of my thoughts on the situation. But overall, keep doing what you're doing and keep perspective. Super, super helpful and important in situations like this, and really remembering those who are truly suffering. And if that's you, my thoughts and prayers are with you, or if it's your loved ones. But I'm really thinking about those who are, those really who are sick and those who have died and those whose businesses are really, really suffering because they rely on things happening outside of a computer. But keep doing what you're doing, keep working hard, and hopefully this will pass with the least amount of harm that's possible to humanity and to business, and we'll keep rolling along. All right, I'll talk to you soon.